Steve has brought up and kind of protested a number of times, saying that if the supernatural has no rules, then how are we to be able to measure it? Or how would you put that, Steve? If the supernatural has no
if the supernatural, okay, we have laws are descriptive, right? Laws of physics are descriptive, right? And Mark pointed out, I could look at a kinematic thing and I could see a parabolic trajectory, which is actually an elliptical trajectory, but I can mathematically model it and say, look, here's the initial conditions, here's my final conditions. I can do that. But if God comes in and says, hey, look, I can change these things anytime. I can slow this resistance, or change this resistance, this friction, this coefficient here, the fine tuning constant, the fine structure constant, anything that God changes will mess everything up, kind of thing. And he could be capricious, like you said. He could be a mercurial God and just want to mess with people and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to change things enough just to keep people on their toes, if he supposedly wanted to. Again, you're presupposing that he doesn't. But
and you're presupposing that he does, and so, but that's what I'm asking. What is your problem?
I'm not presupposing anything, because I don't think God exists, right?
But your argument is that the beef that you have, Steve, is that the supernatural it doesn't follow any rules. Is that what you're?
Yeah, well, because again, I can model a behavior or something descriptively, right? But if you have God allowing for supernatural causations and he does things, how do you model that? How do you formulate things? How do you categorize that? How do you do any empirical analysis or qualitative analysis of that? I don't see any way you could possibly do it, because God could change anything.
Okay, so Mark, how would you respond to that challenge? Because Steve keeps going back to that. So I want to know if there's any way to resolve that.
Yeah, I think one of the ways to look at this is, first of all, the term supernatural is vague, so we need to be clear about what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
So if we're going to be talking about God particularly, if we're going to talk about God particularly of the Bible, then one of the things we have to ask is, not merely is God arbitrary or capricious and he could just come in and twist the laws any way he wants, but the question is, would he have a reason to keep the laws exactly the way they are to prove his existence? In other words, are the clarity and uniformity of the laws of physics as we see them proof of the existence of God? And the answer is yes.
I would say it has no benefit either way. I mean, to me, that's ad hoc, because
well, it's not ad hoc. The question is you asked earlier, does supernatural have no rules? And the question about God in particular, well, God actually does have some rules, and he imposes those rules and as an expression of his character of consistency, coherency, logic, etc. Now, that isn't alone the argument for the existence of God. But what I'm getting at is that when you look at the laws of physics as we see them, they're very clearly uniform, reliable, etc., which is consistent with the nature of God as the Christian God is known.
It'd also be consistent with a God that doesn't exist too. We're presupposing that the uniform nature has to be presupposed, right? You agree it's non-justifiable. We cannot justify the use of even an induction for that very reason, but we still utilize it, right?
We still believe when we see repeated events and we can make law-like statements about them, and that they occur everywhere they're tested, and that attempts to falsify them fail, that this is uniformity. And the greater the extent and explanatory power of those law-like statements, the more we believe in the uniformity. So you're right, the problem of induction is next week it could change, and we have no access to the future. But understanding that we don't have access to the future isn't to say that suddenly the laws are going to change.